Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take on the biggest topics shaping your world and deliver the insights you need.
Today, we are diving deep into a subject that has caused a sudden and massive shift in pretty much every classroom, university hallway, and homework session.
We were talking about artificial intelligence.
Specifically, generative AI, large language models. They're promising this radical efficiency, personalized learning on a scale we've just never seen.
But there's a fundamental tension here, isn't there? We
Ah,
have to measure the cost.
that's the core of it, the cognitive toll on the learner and the very real threat of de-skilling the human educator.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive today is to understand how we got here. We're going to unpack the systemic pressures, the historical, the economic, all of it, that made education so, vulnerable to this AI-driven change.
hmm And then we'll look at the tools themselves, from
Yeah.
smart tutors to administrative automation.
Right. Before we confront those crucial risks, I'm talking about privacy, systemic bias, and the erosion of critical thinking itself.
It's a balancing act. You have this incredible promise of personalization on one side.
And on the other, the threat of deprofessionalizing teaching and encouraging what some call cognitive offloading from students.
Yeah. And to really get why the system is changing so fast, you have to look at the foundations of schooling. The inertia there is immense.
I find this history so crucial because when we talk about education today, we're dealing with a system built on 5 millennia of cultural weight.
5,000 years.
The first formal schools in Sumer in Egypt were only needed because writing was invented. You suddenly needed a structured way to teach it.
That's the beginning of organized knowledge transmission. And then you have religious schools, which are 3,000 years old.
But for standardization on a massive scale, you have to look at China, right?
Oh, absolutely. About 2,500 years ago, the Confucian Academies started, and they eventually integrated standardized exams right into the civil service system.
And that system of national testing to get a government job, it lasted in some form until the 20th century.
It did. That's a staggering amount of political and cultural inertia.
So modern schooling still has these old bones.
Two models, really. K-12 education, whether you're in the U.S. or China, it still reflects the industrial era. It's standardized, age-based, disciplined classrooms,
Designed to prepare kids for the factory floor.
or the office assembly line, yeah. And then higher education is still basically the medieval university system.
Departments focused on disciplines, faculty who are supposed to create new knowledge, granting degrees.
Right. And because of these ancient roots, changing the structure of teaching is incredibly difficult unless outside economic and political pressures have already started to weaken the structure, which they have.
And that takes us directly to this idea of de-skilling, the hollowing out of the profession, even before AI showed up.
This is where the vulnerability really begins.
Yeah.
The key prerequisite for deconstructing a profession, whether it's teaching or law or medicine, is standardizing the knowledge.
Breaking it down into repeatable parts.
Exactly. Once you can systematize it, you can process it. You can automate it.
So let's unpack that. How did de-skilling in K-12 schooling pave the way for automation?
Well, in K-12, you had this huge policy push for standardization. Things like the old No Child Left Behind policy in the U.S. It forced teachers to focus on very specific, measurable outcomes. The curriculum was often decided for them. It breaks the complex art of teaching down into a simple delivery method.
Which is the perfect setup for an intelligent tutoring system to come in and say, I can do that.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And you see that philosophy taken to its extreme in other systems.
Like China.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They have this centuries-long history of national civil service exams. Today, their whole education system is laser-focused on one thing, the Gaokao, the university entrance exam.
So if you have one single standardized goal.
Then you have the ideal environment for automation because the objective is so clearly defined.
Okay, let's pivot to higher education. The pressure there seems more economic, centered on this trend of adjunctification.
The numbers are just stark.
Yeah.
In the U.S., the percentage of tenured faculty dropped from 78% in 1969 to just 27% by 2018.
78 to 27. Wow.
The rest are mostly contingent faculty adjuncts. Lower pay, no benefits, much less say in how the institution is run.
So when you have a shift that dramatic, what is the university signaling? That teaching is less valuable than research.
That's exactly what it is. It's the unbundling of teaching from the other faculty duties like research and governance. Adjuncts are hired just for instruction.
And here's the paradox. The tenured faculty who might publicly speak out against this often benefit directly.
They do. They can shift those large, introductory, highly standardized courses to adjuncts.
The very courses that are easiest to automate.
Mm-hmm. Which frees them up to focus on their own research or smaller advanced classes.
Mm.
It's about the disciplining of labor.
So the system was already fragile, standardized, and under huge economic pressure. And then
Then AI enters the scene, promising to solve the exact problems this fragility created.
let's look at that promise then, starting with the forerunners to Gen AI, Intelligent Tutoring Systems, or IRS. The data on these is actually pretty compelling.
It really is. Meta-analyses, reviews of dozens of studies consistently found that students using an ISS scored higher on tests than students in traditional classrooms.
And crucially, the learning outcomes were comparable to one-on-one human tutoring.
Which is the holy grail, right? Individualized education. And it works best in STEM fields because the curriculum is already so standardized. Math, physics.
It's quantifiable.
Exactly. Now, Gen AI just takes that and magnifies it. It becomes a massive labor extender for the teachers who are left.
Okay, so let's get practical. If I'm a teacher, where do I get my time back?
Lesson planning. It's huge.
Yeah.
You can give an AI tool your objectives and standards, and it can generate a detailed lesson plan in seconds. It can suggest different materials for different students based on their data.
And the administrative stuff, the paperwork.
Automating tasks, translating communications for parents who don't speak English, analyzing performance data to see who's falling behind.
We're even seeing it in operations for safety and things like that.
Yeah, things like suicide risk monitoring in K-12 or chatbots that help parents in Philadelphia and LA navigate the school system or get help with financial aid forms.
That efficiency argument is incredibly powerful for a school district with no money.
It is.
But this is where we have to hit the brakes. We need to talk about the cognitive and social cost of relying on these tools too much.
Absolutely. The ease of getting a perfect sounding answer from Gen AI leads to a major risk we call cognitive offloading.
Can you break that down for us?
Well, it's when you shift a mental task, like remembering something or reasoning through a problem, completely over to technology.
We've seen this before, haven't we? The Google effect.
That's a perfect example. We stopped remembering facts because we knew we could just look them up. But AI takes it a huge step further. We're not just outsourcing facts, we're outsourcing the process of analysis and synthesis.
So instead of connecting the dots ourselves, we're just asking the machine to do it for us and then consuming the final product.
And if that's overused, it could seriously erode critical thinking skills. Students become passive consumers of information instead of active thinkers. They don't build that mental muscle.
And the data shows students are already leaning on this heavily.
They are. The most common uses are for writing essays, that's 56% of students, and studying for tests at 52%.
And teachers are worried.
Deeply worried. They see it diminishing a student's ability to structure an argument, to write clearly on their own. It's a loss of agency over their own thinking.
I think we forget just how psychologically powerful conversational AI can be. I mean, we had hints of this back in the 1960s with a chatbot called Eliza.
That's a fantastic parallel. Eliza was so simple, it basically just repeated your own statements back to you as questions.
And yet people confided in it. They felt it understood them.
They did. Even that very simple code could get people to share deep emotional thoughts. Now imagine that power multiplied exponentially with today's large language models.
Which points to the mental health concerns, especially in higher ed. Things like digital fatigue, loneliness, what they call technostress.
Right. If you're relying on AI for communication, you're reducing your face-to-face interaction with other people.
Which is where you develop interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence.
And if a student turns to an AI for support, even if the academic advice is good, the research suggests that a tool without empathy can actually make them feel more isolated.
So beyond the individual, we have to look at the systemic risks, the ethical failures baked right into the technology.
The core issue is that AI is trained on human data. It's not a neutral tool. It's going to reflect and perpetuate our biases.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Language models have been shown to associate jobs like flight attendant or secretary with women and jobs like lawyer or judge with men. That bias is trained right in.
And we're seeing huge problems with the AI detectors that schools rush to adopt.
Oh, they've been a disaster. They're notoriously inaccurate, and they disproportionately flag non-native English speakers as cheating.
Why is that?
Because their simpler, more direct writing style can look like it was generated by a machine.
And this bias can creep into the curriculum itself, can it?
Of course. If your tutoring system is trained on a data set that isn't diverse, the content it produces will have unintentional biases. It won't meet the needs of all students.
Let's talk about the black box problem. The fact that we often don't know why an AI made a certain decision. Why is that so dangerous in education?
It's a threat to basic fairness. Think about high-stakes decisions, automated grading, disciplinary actions. If a proprietary algorithm makes that call, the school often can't explain the rationale. And if you can't explain why a decision was made, it becomes almost impossible for a student or a parent to challenge it.
And finally, there's this huge conflict around surveillance and privacy, especially in K-12 schools.
Sure. Schools are using AI monitoring to detect suicide risk, which is a real concern.
Yeah.
But these systems compromise student privacy, and they're often rolled out without any consent.
What does the community think about that trade-off?
It's messy. In one survey, 63% of caregivers felt the benefits outweigh the privacy risks.
But at the same time,
49% were still worried about privacy violations. And some parents pointed out that when the software flags a kid, the school's response is sometimes more punitive than supportive.
more about removing the student than getting them help.
Exactly. The tool finds the problem, but the human system has to provide the right response.
Okay, so we've covered the history, the promise, the risks. The consensus seems to be that you can't just ban this technology.
No, you can't turn it off. Unregulated access is a much bigger risk. We need policy to catch up and fast.
And that policy has to be built around a human-centered approach.
Absolutely. AI has to be an augmenting tool, something that empowers good teachers, not a replacement for them. Every AI interaction has to begin and end with human oversight and responsibility.
So transparency becomes non-negotiable. Schools have to tell parents what data they're collecting and get consent.
And they have to follow the law, FERPA, COPA, all the privacy regulations. And staff and students need to be trained.
Trained to understand that AI output is not gospel.
Right. It's not a source of unquestionable truth. It is designed to generate plausible text, which means it can and will hallucinate. It will make things up. You have to check its work.
Which brings us to what feels like the most urgent need of all, AI literacy.
And this isn't just a new tech class. It's really an amplification of digital literacy and media literacy, things we should have been prioritizing for years.
The core skills are the same.
Exactly. Critical thinking, ethical awareness, responsible participation. Those are the skills you need to use AI wisely.
So to sum up, AI has this proven potential to personalize learning and take a huge administrative load off of teachers.
But that progress is built on a very shaky foundation. A history of standardization, systemic biases, black box algorithms, and the risk of turning students into, well, passive consumers of outsourced thought.
Which means for you, the learner, the future of being well-informed is less about finding the right tool.
And far more about mastering the human skill of critical inquiry.
Of skepticism. Which leads us to our final provocative thought. The historical push for standardization was what made mass automation in education possible. So if these AI systems fundamentally need knowledge to be systematized and predictable to work.
What essential parts of human teaching? The messy, unautomatable stuff like social-emotional labor or connecting a complex idea to a specific child's life, mentorship, what happens to those things? Will the system be forced to ignore them? And what do we truly lose when we stop valuing the parts of human intelligence that can't be turned into code?